Hey guys, let's talk about last night's episode of The Originals. So the cliffhanger from last week's episode was like fantastically awesome and awful, both at the same time. I was on the edge of my seat and then the episode ended and I couldn't wait for tonight's episode. And this episode did not disappoint. I will say that I feel like I got a different episode than I expected. Honestly, I think I was just ready for a fight. And while we did get some of that, this episode was really more about the emotional side of what is wrong with this family. Let's talk about dysfunctional families, people. The fact that they were all kind of like trapped together in this like cemetery together was kind of crazy. I mean, like, it was like, what would happen if you had an intervention with your family, but somebody locked the door and you guys couldn't get out until you kind of figured everything out? That was totally what this was like. There were lots of flashbacks, which I thought were really, really interesting. I mean, we got to see more of Rebecca and Klaus and how they interacted as children. We really get, right, that Rebecca just absolutely loved Klaus. Like, this was her older brother. She wanted to be like him. He was her protector. And once again, we get that their dad, Michael, was just not a nice man at all. There were so many scenes of him beating poor Klaus. I mean, it was just ridiculous, right? At one point, too, I thought it was really interesting because Elijah actually reveals to Klaus that there was this time when Rebecca was going to try to kill their dad. And Elijah actually stopped her. And you get that she was going to do this for Klaus. Like, she was tired of watching Michael hurt her brother, and so she had just decided that she was gonna kill him. Now, the real issue in the cemetery, of course, is that Klaus has the white oak stake, right? I mean, we're assuming that he is there to kill Rebecca, but in the end, I think he really just wants her to get what he was feeling. And so he pushes her until she finally admits that she didn't just call Michael so that he would make Klaus run away, that there was probably a part of her that wanted Michael to kill Klaus. Like, that is how much she wanted to be rid of him. And that fear, you know, that Klaus felt in that moment when Michael showed up in New Orleans, he wanted Rebecca to get that. He wanted her to feel that and to understand, you know, why he was so upset. Elijah, of course, is like the great mediator. He's there to stop Klaus from killing their sister, but at the same time to also get Klaus to listen to Rebecca. There was lots of yelling and stabbing. And by the end, what happens is that Klaus actually like releases Rebecca. He tells her, you can go. You know, he asked her, what is it that you want? She tells him, you know, like, I want a family. I want a home. I want someone to love me. And so he tells her to go and to get all of those things. And so, you know, even as the episode ends and you see Rebecca kind of driving away, she just has this look of just like happiness on her face because you get that she's finally gonna go get what she wants and she doesn't have to be afraid that someone's chasing her. She could just go and kind of find her happiness. And I thought that was really cool. I'm not quite sure what that means for Rebecca on the show. Does that mean that we're not gonna see her for a while? Because that kind of bums me out because I like Rebecca. I wanted to point out a few kind of really cool things that I thought about the cemetery scenes. They just felt really, really deep to me, you guys. And I gotta give it up for all of the actors involved in those scenes. I just felt like the original family, like those actors were so fantastic. I mean, it was just deep and there was tears and it was a beautiful thing. So there were several really kind of cool, like deep things that I thought happened during those scenes. One was just kind of like perspective based. So there were several scenes where Rebecca and Elijah were down on like ground level and Klaus had like climbed up on top of this mausoleum and he's like put himself, you know, higher than they were, almost like a king would, you know. I just thought that was so interesting because I felt like it was almost like a physical representation of how kind of out of touch Klaus is and of that distance really that is between him and his siblings. Some of that because of the things he endured when they were kids and some of that is his own fault. I just thought that was really, really deep. I also really loved that moment towards the end of the confrontation when Rebecca and Klaus are talking just about how damaged they are. I just thought that was so interesting, you know, that point that was made about the fact that here they are like the strongest creatures that walk the earth. You know, they're vampires who are truly immortal, but at the same time, you know, they are so broken, you know, like they're each so damaged. And I just thought that was like kind of mind blowing when you think about it. The other deep part in the cemetery too was that moment when they realize that the spell is broken and they see the gate kind of swing open so they know they can leave. To me, it was like this picture of the fact that when you deal with your past, you know, when you not only kind of face it and examine it, but actually deal with it for real, then that is when freedom comes. You know, it's then that you can really kind of leave your past behind. You can put it to rest. I mean, they were actually like in a cemetery. And the whole kind of family argument was almost like, hey, let's deal with this and let's kill it so we can move on. And I just thought that whole scene in the cemetery, I mean, there was so much symbolism and like deepness in that scene. I mean, it just was so good. Now, outside of the cemetery, we get that Davina is back. You know, we get that from last week, but Davina is not doing so well. Turns out that the ancestors were not that happy with her on the other side because she, of course, had been working against the witches when she was alive. So this child was basically like traumatized in the afterlife. That's what we get. Now, the witches want Davina, but I'm not quite sure that we can really trust her with them. I'm sensing that now that the witches are starting to get their power back, we're going to be seeing more of a power struggle between the vampires and the witches. So that should be kind of interesting. So Rebecca's gone, but it looks like Elijah is sticking around. Elijah is really there to remind Klaus that there is good in him, you know, and to draw that out of him. So I guess I'm going to be interested to see if that happens without Elijah, you know, getting corrupted. Towards the end of the episode, we saw this moment from him that was very Klaus-like. I like to call it Elijah 2.0, but he tossed Marcel across the room like he was a rag doll. At first I thought it was Klaus who had done it, but then it turns out that it was Elijah. So yeah, you know, I want Elijah to help Klaus, but I don't want him to become him. Yeah, you guys, another fantastic episode of the originals. Last week was definitely like the best of the season so far, and this week wasn't too shabby either. Can't wait to hear what you guys thought about this episode. Make sure that you tell me about that down in the comment section below, and I will see you guys again really soon. Bye.